Something interesting happened today. I was looking at my comments on my most recent video, which is my gigantic review, and I noticed something a little strange. There's a guy that commented named Mazdapan, and he says, "Thanks a lot. Now I know where to go now that Paladins OB44 is out." And naturally, that kind of piqued my interest because some of my most popular videos deal with Paladins in some way or another, even though I'm not really a fan of the game myself. All that aside, I find this really, really interesting. It piqued my curiosity, so I went straight to the Paladins subreddit where I found pretty much nothing but stark negativity all over the front few pages of the Paladins subreddit, which again was very interesting. It turns out Open Beta 44 for Paladins decided to put in some sort of Hearthstone-like loot system to where you buy chests, you unlock it, you get some skins, you get cards, you get essence, you get etc. And, you know, with the way loot chests work, it's pretty much an RNG system at its core. And there's no problem with games implementing something like that, but people are upset. Based on what I've read, based on what I've watched, people are upset because it takes what was essentially a very short grind to be able to get as much as you wanted out of the game. Like it doesn't take very long in the previous versions of Paladins for you to play to get what you want, to buy the heroes you want, to build the loadouts you want, etc. But this update also released a new currency system, which is the way that you buy your cards, the way you buy the newly introduced legendary cards, and from what I can tell, the only way to get essence is through those chests, which you can only get through leveling up heroes, leveling up your account, or just straight up buying them. One of the big problems is that some of these cards, the legendary ones in particular, which can drastically change the way you play from what I've looked at, are prohibitively expensive. And of course, with the way these games work, there's always going to be strong ones and there's going to be weak ones. As things get buffed and nerfed, these are going to constantly shift, which of course incentivizes you to build new loadouts, buy more stuff, buy more chests. So with those becoming prohibitively expensive and essence being hard to get, as more and more heroes come out, the barrier to entry becomes bigger and bigger. The incentive to spend money on chests becomes bigger and bigger, and that pushes the model more towards a pay-to-win model, and people are pissed! I'm not gonna lie, with all of the salty comments that I still get on my Paladins videos today, I find this probably funnier than I should. You never exactly want a game to fail. I don't want Paladins to fail. I don't want Hi-Rez to fail, but this is such a ridiculously baffling move. You'd think something like this would be tested on a test server. You'd think that the community outcry would make them do something about it. As it is right now, there is a post on the Overwatch subreddit that's on the front page that's calling for a free weekend to poach all of the upset Paladins players. Again, I find that hilarious. Now I'm going to go ahead and address a comment that I'm going to get and that I get all the damn time on these videos. And that comment is, "But it's in beta." Well, that's not an excuse. For all intents and purposes, I'm going to consider Paladins a launched game. It's out there to the public. It doesn't require anything to start playing. You can just download it, create a free account, boom, you're in, you're playing. That's it. That's all it takes. Beta or not, they're still charging money for the game. People are still handing over their cash for the game. They're asking for cash for the game. Beta or not, a move like this is harmful. It breeds bad will among the consumers. It makes people who once loved the game now question not only the game itself, but the developers behind it, and it makes the people who were already burned previously by Hi-Rez Studios with Tribes Ascend and Global Agenda, it makes those people even more wary of ever getting into a Hi-Rez game because of stuff like this. Poorly thought out things like this that can just completely decimate any goodwill that the developers have built. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that I find this really, really interesting, and it's not just because I have, I guess, a weird bias against Paladins at this point, just because of all the shitty comments that I get. I find it interesting because every once in a while I do go back to check on how Paladins is doing. even if just on the subreddit. For games that I've had some involvement in, whether it be making a video of, or being a voice actor in the game, or just generally being hyped about the game, I like to go back and see how it's doing. Hi-Rez in general were one of my favorite game developers back in the Global Agenda days, so I kind of like look back and hope that maybe someday I'll be able to relive what I loved so much about Global Agenda from them once again someday. I don't know. It's hard to really say, but I find it interesting because the Paladins subreddit, every time I go back to check, it's usually full of positivity. It's full of people enjoying the game. It's found its audience, and even though I'm not part of that audience, I think that's great. I think it's great that it's found its audience. But for this new patch to just completely turn the mood around on the subreddit, and even the Steam reviews are looking terrible as of late, as of the past few days. If nothing has changed, I think that the very positive ranking might go down to maybe mixed. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it's all very interesting and at some level hilarious to me. Take that as you will. But if nothing else, game developers who look at this and want to create a free-to-play game but want to monetize their game in some way, they can use at least this moment in Paladins history as a very clear example of what not to do to your player base, what not to do to your game. As far as I can tell, this new update stifles new players' ability to be able to experiment with different playstyles for different characters. At least at a comfortable rate. It doesn't just stifle the new players either, it stifles the people who want to come into this game at a competitive level. Like I mentioned earlier, the nature of these games means that every time that there's a patch that buffs or nerfs something, the meta game is going to change. You're going to probably want different cards for different loadouts, which means you're going to have to grind up some essence to buy those cards. It's just going to become a never-ending cycle, and that's not even to mention the fact that Paladins is planning on releasing a lot of new champions every year. I think the number is 13, I've seen that thrown around, don't quote me on it, but the fact is they've got a bunch of new champions in the pipeline, releasing them much quicker than the likes of Overwatch would ever dream to do. But yeah, this whole thing is interesting, it's baffling, and I'm really confused as to why something so drastic has been introduced at this point in the game's lifespan to completely piss people off this way. Like, you think this is something that would have been caught earlier. And one thing that I want to leave you with before I end this video is something very interesting that I saw on the Paladins review page. This specific review has 178.7 hours into Paladins. It seems like he really enjoyed the game for quite a while, but now it's a thumbs down. He said, "I considered this game to be a good one, a valid alternative to Overwatch for Steam owners." And then he goes on about Open Beta 44, the cards are important, it's the real problem. But there's one very specific part of this review that I want to show you, and it says this: "But the worst thing of all is about the news that transpired from some people playing the closed beta of Paladins and available on Reddit page." That English is a little more broken than I thought it was, but let's continue. "This system had been implemented once already during closed beta despite the complaints of the player base and has been removed only after a few weeks later because the players were tired of that crap and left the game. So in few words, this mistake has been made once and has been corrected because the game was dying." Now, I haven't done the research to know whether or not this is true, so take that definitely with a grain of salt. This is highly alleged. I haven't seen anything about this. I haven't experienced this. I haven't seen any videos or anything like that with this kind of system. But if that's true, that's very disturbing. And it makes me question Hi-Rez's integrity as game developers. Don't get me wrong, they have a right to monetize their game, but there's a way to do it that breeds goodwill in your players, and there's a way to not do it that will piss people off. This is a very bad way to do it. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. This was a pretty impromptu video, all things considered, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. Please let me know what you think in the comments section below, and as always, do all the social media stuff, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, blah 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 blah, and I will see you next time.